just want to introduce the panel to you, the second panel after lunch. It's always the most difficult time, so I hope we're going to be very dynamic here at the front and keep you on your toes. So the second panel, we want to talk about the relationships between stakeholders and addressing the GBV crisis. We've already started working in this direction of mapping, who is working in the space, what are they doing. We want to try and take that conversation a bit deeper, start to unpack, where are the challenges in the relationships between stakeholders, but also where have the relationships worked well. So that's another part of the question that we want to look at. What has actually worked in the... We often complain about the relationship between stakeholders, but there are instances where it really does work, and we also want to unpack that. And in the afternoon, in the working groups, take that even further. Okay, so let's get stuck in. We've already started to map the stakeholders, but can we just have, perhaps we can start with you, who is working in the space? What would you say, who is actually doing things around GBV and peace and security? Who are the actors that are really stuck in doing stuff in this space?
Thank you very much, Corey. I think it's a combination of, as we had alluded earlier on, it's a combination of stakeholders, communities, as we had said, traditional leaders, religious leaders, and any leaders, for that matter, that are based in communities, in partnership with, our government departments, as we had said, in partnership, if in those villages, because some villages are not as lucky as other villages where they would have NPOs that are really working on GBVs. So I would say it's a combination of all those stakeholders that are working together. But in cases where you don't have other external stakeholders, you would use the stakeholders that are within the communities. The community leaders, those are the people that are really working with GBV in our communities.
Can you just say, for those of us who don't know, when you talk about community leaders, what do we mean? Do we mean church leaders? Do we mean...
Yes, traditional leaders, church leaders, any other leader that is there, in a community, because we've got different leaders within our community. So anyone who is termed as a community leader, it could be school governing bodies. It could be a chairperson of a farmers association. All those people that are leading communities in different aspects in our communities.
Maybe youth leaders as well.
Youth leaders as well. Yes, we encourage youth, especially in our mbizos, in our community meetings, to be part, because we see them as the leaders of tomorrow. So. We encourage youth to be part of us so that they can be able to, to get the experience from us. And of course, youth have got their own issues, so they are part of this whole puzzle. So we have to include them as well.
And Tivo, from the government side, which departments are working in this space that we need to be aware of?
Thanks. From the government side, we do have the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, which is really responsible for coordinating the efforts for fighting, the scourge of violence against women and children. We do have the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, which is key when it comes to issues of the legislations. If you might have seen over the past years, we have amended 3 key legislations through the Department of Justice and Constitutional Department. And then you also have the, South African Police Services that are also working in the space. And then when it comes to women, peace and security, we have the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, as well as the Department of Defense, which are the 3 core departments that are co-leading, the implementation of the women, peace and security in the country. But also, I must also indicate that all other government departments are also involved in the fight against violence on women and children. You do have the Department of Social Development that also plays key role We do have also the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, which is also very key, given also, their position and also their network, in the provinces as well as at the local level. So all these government departments, although there are others that I might not have mentioned, they also, through the implementation of the National Action Plan on violence against women and children, they have a responsibility to report on a monthly basis. So the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities coordinate the reports from all the different departments, which means that all the key actions on the different pillars of the NSP gets to be reported on, which also links to what Memalefane was saying on the issue of women, peace and security, to say that there are elements of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence that links directly with the women, peace and security. And then that is one of the areas that as the department were maintained to see, given our coordination work, it means that we also need to ensure that all the other government departments need to also focus on other key elements of the women, peace and security strategy. When it comes to the women, peace and security, NAP, there are 3 departments we are co-leading. It's the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Department of Defense, as well as the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. These 3 departments do lead on that one. But when it comes to the NSP on GBVF, the Department of Women is lead coordinating, because we are expected to report to presidency on an ongoing, on a monthly basis. We're supposed to be reporting to the president on the progress that we're making towards the implementation of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. So we do that with presidency when it comes to the implementation. Also with the National Action Plan on the GBVF, for us, it's more to say that we are coordinating, but they are implementing, departments. There are also civil society organizations that are key players. And then if you look also on the NSP, GBVF NSP, you will realize that it was driven by a collective effort, but not from government, but it was a collective effort. Because for us, in order to get somewhere, more especially towards the eradication of the violence against women and also ensuring peace and security, we need, everyone to be on board.
Nkosikazi Gobindlala, the first speaker, almost highlighted all of them. Because basically, when you're dealing with GBV, you need to look into I use this term in the morning. You have to look into the ecosystem as a whole. Before you can even reach to what the other speaker referred to as your primary stakeholders, we have to begin at the bottom. What they refer to within the business sector, they call it bottom-up approach. Yes, so you've got a family, you've got your church, you've got education / schools, early development centers, primary, junior, high school, up to tertiary now, because we're in a crisis. Then you move up, social development, and then the list goes on. So we cannot say we have got fixed stakeholders, but we have that ecosystem. They are the fundamental ideology that we can use to address the GBV issue from the roots. They are the basic agencies to addressing GBV.
I think, Lady D, from your work with LEPECO, you'd be on board with the emphasis on education.
Most definitely, and thank you so much for the opportunity, and greetings to everyone. A very key player as well is the South African Police Service, right? I appreciating the ecosystem notion. as well as any form of mobilization that you find in communities. An example is your gender-based violence brigades within Gauteng's situation. So the Gauteng government decided to enroll a few gender-based violence brigades that are now going into families, door to door, to assist in, resolving first-hand or first contact response in terms of gender-based violence. And we wish that this model could be replicated, in all other provinces. Just yesterday, by way of illustration, we had, like I said to the group, a peace table at the school. So the different stakeholders that were there involved, yes, faith-based organizations, the big brigades, the ex-convicts as well. Because now, remember, they're now giving you real-time, experience information on what is going on should you commit an offense, right? What happens to you, and they now share it with the children. Very impactful. At the same time, we do need to have, whilst we're having SGBs, the teachers' associations. We need them. We have not spoken to them as well, but they are also contributors to what is happening within the school realm. So Parents Association, yes, we know it's represented by the SGB, but we also do have those kind of, in private sector, they call them parents associations or so on. So thank you. The business community also plays a big role. Just Saturday, we had Sports for Peace, also in Tembisa, whereby we had security companies, donating some of their resources financially and otherwise to the mission of peace building within Tembisa. This is all done to contribute to the prevention pillar, of the two strategic documents, the NSP on GBVF, as well as the NAP on women, peace and security, and which we are now talking about youth, peace and security as well. Something that it's on the radar. We believe that when the president called all of us through the Generation Equality Forum's statement of commitment in Paris, in 2021, that he's going to initiate a time for peace drive, and that every corner of this country should have a peace space, that we all have within. And those peace corners is what we are now trying to, replicate in many other, spaces within the community. And the key stakeholders are those that we have mentioned, including academia. So what we have done in relation to that is that when we were implementing the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, we now have a report, right? A knowledge product that was developed by one of our sister collaborators, because we're big fans of collaboration. Collaboration or nothing with us, right? Yeah, it's collaboration is the currency. So the academia then played that role of producing that knowledge product, and we believe it will be the same for the NSP. And that's why where we think we will now find each other, when we will now look at what the gaps are through that knowledge product that is being produced Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I just want to highlight a few things. And I think the term that the Queen used of ecosystems is a really helpful one, because it speaks to the interdependency of different elements of different stakeholders within the system. You know, as you were speaking about the private sector, I was remembering that during our transition to democracy, the business community was at the forefront of funding that mediation process and supporting the mediation process. And I think this is what we need to really be thinking about. The other thing that they were very involved in at the time, together with a multiplicity of stakeholders, was developing peace committees. Some people still remember them, but many people don't. And I wonder, and when you talk about these peace corners and the peace tables, it's something we can be thinking about again. Did I understand correctly that, Lepeka, you've been working with the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities?
We are contributors of the collaborative, something very beautiful that the Department of Women has done for civil society and many other role players, is to create that space for collaboration, wherein we're expected, we've got 100-day challenges, we've got all these interesting things that we put up there, and we account to everyone on the things that we said we're going to do and how far have we gone with doing them, right? So that's why we're saying, when we looked at ourselves as an organization, saying, but we contribute to these two documents, so we better start drawing a peace map for ourselves, where we map the two, and Osintabi saying made mention of it, that of the 6 pillars, 4 are identically the same. So there is no need for us to have that separation of coordination. Although we do have different steering committees, or rather with the NSP, there's a council that needs to be established. There's a bill that's going on and people must contribute to that. But with the NAP, we have a steering committee that we need to report to on the actions that we have taken. And I must tell you that civil society, once again, has taken the lead in implementing that which government should have implemented. But we pardon them because they have created an enabling environment for us to do this work. So we can only trust and hope that, you know, with the efforts that are made from civil society, then government will also come in. And I always say that with the enablement that they have done for us as civil society is to create things like the gender-based violence and femicide fund. Although I don't like using it, I would rather say fund the peace, not the gender-based violence, you know, because, you know, that's a thin line between that. So if we then go out and appreciate the enablement that government has done by talking to several partners and development partners who then will fund the initiatives. They say the money follows ideas. So with the ideas that we're having that are working, then there shouldn't be a reason for nobody to not have, you know, proper support.
Right. I love this word, this term, enabling environment, and I think we need to hold on to that. If government is able to create enabling environments, other actors in society are ready to run, and I think we hear that from the traditional leaders as well. They already are running and doing the work, but what is needed is this enabling environment, even if then government isn't able to do everything, and they perhaps shouldn't be doing everything. Can I just ask, Tivo, how did you create this enabling environment before we go back to our traditional leaders? How did you create this enabling environment, and who are the people that are being invited to be part of this coordinating? Is it a steering committee?
It's a collaborative. It's a collaborative. Anyone is involved.
Okay.
Anybody can be part of it.
National Peace and Security Work Plan was to identify the key departments that needs to be leading on this initiative. And, you know, it came out clearly that, you know, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Department of Defense, as well as the Department of International Relations. But from there, it was also to identify, looking at the different pillars of the strategy, to say, who are the key players that needs to be involved, because that's where you need to sit down and, you know, map out to say, for us, in order to, implement this, we need to appreciate that as government alone, we won't be able to implement alone. So for us, it was more on that. It also goes to the issue of the National Action Plan on women, on the gender-based violence and femicide. You will remember that in 2018, when there was the, what led to where we are with regard to the development of the National Action Plan. It was, the civil society and then the summit that came there, where the president had to be there and ensure that there is commitment, but also the civil society and all the other actors were saying, we are here in this space, we have been working in this space, you cannot leave us out. And then they are also key lessons that you can learn from many initiatives that we are already developing. So for us was to, appreciate our limitations and also map out to say who are the key players out there. And then without leaving out the development partners who have been very, very generous and also who have assisted. Some of them have also assisted us in identifying some of the key countries that we can benchmark and also learn from, to say this is what had been done elsewhere, and then you move forward from there.
Okay, so this is really an example, in fact, of where it is working, and it's very encouraging to hear. And it was not only the enabling environment and the coordination of the people who are working in this space, but also I heard the word fund, and I thought there's actually resources being allocated to support this. But I have the sense that this is not the experience of people at the provinces and in the rural areas. And so my question to our traditional leaders is, in your context, are there these open channels of communication with government departments? How is the coordination happening between stakeholders, if at all?
Yeah. Thanks, Corey. Might sound that we are negative or complaining or whatever, but actually, I'm sure the Queen as well and everybody else here who's here representing women in traditional leadership, some of the names and the concepts, it's the first time that we're hearing them. The National Action Plan, we don't know. We're just going to be honest. We've never heard of them. So as we are listening and appreciating the information, but we're sitting here shaking our heads, but Tina, we don't have all these things that they're talking about. I'm listening to Lady D here, and I see Lady D is on this level, and we are here. And I want to go back to the department as well and say, as they are getting these monthly reports about on the National Action Plan, where does the Eastern Cape feature, specifically the rural Eastern Cape? Do you get those reports, and where do you get from them? Because we are not in that space. And the Department of Women and Children, for example, we don't even have it because it's a national department. It's probably linked to the social development, if I'm correct. But all these nice things that are, all the good work that is being done, the peace tables, the everything, we don't have them. And then it goes back to what we were talking about, the capacitation, because we're not capacitated enough. Maybe if we were this capacitated, we would be far. The resources, we don't have the resources even to just to call a small meeting to say, I'm looking for young girls to do this. So I think we're talking in different levels. The other provinces are way above. The other provinces are like the Eastern Cape. I'm sure KwaZulu-Natal as well will attest to this. I don't think we are at this level. So we need to be at the same level. If we are engaging civil societies, traditional leaders, women organizations, we need to engage them and all of us become at the same level. Otherwise, we're never going to win this journey if one is number 1 and one is at number 10. Yeah, so that's my view.
Thank you, Nkosi. I think that's really helpful. Did you want to come in, Lady D, briefly, please?
Just quickly. Four provinces: KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, Gauteng, and Northwest. Also owing to resources. Traditional leaders linked by its Africa, Yaka Dr. Dr. Ngidi, Africology Institute, was part of capacity building as well, with that is now in KwaZulu-Natal, right? And also that was a response to the July unrest that we found ourselves having to go and capacitate those 3 KZN and Western Cape and Gauteng. The plan is to go nationally. When we went to the parliament, that was a step in the direction of eventually having to go through to everyone. Go to Barolongbo Ratsidi in the Northwest. Khosi CMAUP and his people, including Khosi Muntiwa, they've got a copy of the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. So it is an initiative that we all want to see everyone having access to that kind of information. So the monthly reporting that Ma is talking about, when the collaborative was formed, I happened to be there. It was during COVID, right? And we were always sensitizing. Not everybody is here, because our sisters and brothers in where we come from, where we are rooted, are not part of this discussion. What is gonna be the plan going forward? And we're always guaranteed that it will go further. It will not just stay where it is. But what we also did was to try and advocate to say those who are in the conference rooms, the online conference rooms, must please go share the information with others. Okay. That is why some of us created online platforms like your Peace Corner, like the Gertrude Shope Women Mediators Network, that spreads this information as it comes through. We know it's not enough, but we need to, acknowledge the fact that it is going to the right direction.
Before I turn to the Queen, can I just ask Tivu about, so it's a national department, how do you work with the provinces? Is it to the Department of Social Development or?
Our approach to the provincial departments, we work through the offices of the Premier. So we go through the offices of the Premier. I think that's one of the areas that when we were seated in our table there discussing, I discussed to say that we do have challenges and limitations, because even if you want to go and reach out to different local communities, you as the national department, we don't have provincial presence, but we work through the offices of the Premier or SWs. So when you go there, you will indicate that there is this program that we are implementing or that we want to implement, and then we will want to go to a community. Then those are you get guidance from the provinces itself. Then you need to go to the district and local municipalities. Then that's where the challenge is. I think it's also a gap on our side to say, where do you involve the Department of Traditional Affairs? Because they are the ones that are supposed to also link you with your local communities. So for us, if you are going to a province, you also need to ensure that the Department of Traditional Affairs, or COCTA, needs to be on board, and they will also give you guidance in that regard. I think for both the Women, Peace and Security, NAP, as well as the NGBVF, that is one of the areas that we need to look at and ensure that moving forward, we put emphasis to say, for us, in order to have reach to the local areas, that's where we need to go. But our approach has always been through the offices of the Premier. And then that's where at times you might find that some of the programs don't trickle down to the local communities, but it's only the offices of the Premier that will report on some of the programs that they are implementing at their,
Maybe at the city where they're based.
yes. If it's a Department of Social Development that will come, they will report on the programs that they are doing, and then without going down to the communities. That's one of the areas that we need to work on.
If that's one outcome of this workshop or this roundtable dialogue, Tivu, is that you begin to work with the traditional leaders in order to disseminate the work of the national office, that would be a fantastic outcome. Queen, if you have anything you want to add about the channels of communication that exist between yourselves and the government and others working in the GBV space. Are you ever consulted, for example, in your role as Queen, about these
Thank
issues?
you. Not to sound critical, but we have to put a stamp where we can. The Department of Women and Children, People with Disabilities, am I right, does not exist. It exists at a national level and higher levels. This is where our government falls short. We put a strategy very nice on paper, work it well, introduction, whatnot, resolution, conclusion and all. When it comes to implementation, putting structures into place, you can have a critical department. Women, children, people with disability, not existing within the communities, within the spheres of government, local, district, provincial. It's there on national. You have a department of a national department. You are supposed to have satellite offices. I'm not going to talk about the provincial office, what's Premier's office. That's another thing on its own. Talk about the department here. Develop, structured to attend. There's a plan, a department that has a strat plan. You have your national office. You're supposed to have your satellite office. It is very critical. You're supposed to have your regional office where your target group can come and say, Ngogo, I'm here. So this Premier's office thing, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna even try and to understand it. To me, I don't understand. This is a very critical department you're talking about. We wouldn't be here trying to understand the NSP that we don't understand as traditional leaders. I'm talking about all traditional leaders here. We have an NSP document well worked out with its pillars, with its approaches and all that. Is it implemented? They will say yes at a level, not at our level. Because you put a document, where are the tools of trade to ensure that those proposals are achieved? At what level? Who is your target audience, target group, when you develop that concept of a document? Were they there? The traditional leaders, were they there? We approached the district level, at the provincial level, we attended the forums and everything, but when it came to national, none of us were there. Then we were told there's a document. The document makes no mention of us. We talk about traditional leaders. Our role, where do we feature? During COVID, we had a role. I like how my colleague there refers to it, fire extinguishers. Because now no one can travel. We are there on the ground. Now we are the only ones that can reach to our people. So I want our colleagues here to understand that we feel that we are the forgotten group by our government. This Department of Women and everything is a very critical department. I don't even know its values and mission, but they are there. How are they achieving them? Who is their target group? How are they even measured? What are their KPIs? I would like to know more. What are their KPIs? You know, I'm just going to make a simple example. It was very easy for us, as I lead Imbumba Yamakoskaza Gomkulu in Eastern Cape, which has also the fellow colleagues at KZN have started as well. It was easy for us to write to the Department of Education, because they are within reach to us, and tell them that there's a module there at school referred to as life orientation. Let's restructure that module, subject at a level. Can it address the issue of GBV as it is? Can it be standard that is part of the curriculum, GBVF, through that life orientation program? There's a lot that we can suggest. There's a lot that we can suggest within this department, Department of Women and other departments, but they are not coming close to us. And it's difficult to get hold of them because they are not available. You don't even know what uzoqala kubani, and then you go to whom, because the offices are not there. They are at a higher level.
Right. Just to clarify, this organization that you lead in the Eastern Cape, what is it?
Imbumba Yamakoska's Agomkulu is a segment of traditional women, your king's wives, and your senior traditional leaders' wives.
Okay.
It was just to briefly, it was established to look into issues of women, deep rural, to be a vehicle of those voiceless people, not just women, royal working women, but also ordinary people from our communities, so that we're able to reach.
Right.
Yeah, so it is that.
And one of the things this organization has done is to advocate for GBV to be included in the life orientation curriculum at schools. And I'm just mentioning this and giving attention to it because it shows what traditional leaders are concerned with and are working on in relation to what the government is doing. I'm also aware that a similar group did advocate for the inclusion of a gender committee at the National House, for example. There's a lot of examples like that where you're not just working in the sphere of traditional leaders, you're actually working in the domain in which government is working, education, health, the whole range. Do you want to add something to that, Nkosi?
I think she said it all. She said it all. But yeah, other than I think you've captured everything that the Queen has said. But other than the EA that she has mentioned as well. We have other organizations. We have another organization which is led by Nkosuno Kwaka National, which is Contralesa Women's Wing, and I am leading the provincial wing of it, which is Contralesa Women's Wing, which was also instrumental in what you were talking about in bringing in addressing actually the gender equity in our houses of traditional leaders, because as you know, prior. Or if we talk about patriarchy in traditional leadership, in our houses only there were men, but now in all our houses we made sure that there's women representation, because there are issues that there will always in fact be issues of women and children that needs to be addressed at any given time. So the best people to address issues of women and children, in fact, issues of men as well, it's us as women because of that nurturing stature that we have. So what we're trying to say is that other than the government departments that you work with, there are other organizations that are led by women. For example, when she's talking about your department, because we were supposed to be key stakeholders on that department because we deal directly with the ground issues about women and children. Hence, my question was, on his reports, what gets reported on those reports, because you will find that there's something else, but there's something else that we are sitting with that is never reported anywhere. I think we did mention that when we were having our discussions here, we said, we do work, we do a lot of work, but our work is not recorded anywhere, or is not recognized for that matter. So once we get to that status of being recognized in anything, because if we're talking about a national action plan, so we're talking nationally, you will get resistance when you come with your national action plan, because we will find loopholes, challenges. How did you come to this? Because it didn't start at the bottom. So it's a top-up approach down to here. So what we're saying is, or anyone who's listening, who's a stakeholder for that matter, for anything to work, and anything to work, it has to start from grassroots level. It shouldn't be a top-up approach, it should be a bottom-up approach.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I wish I had the numbers at my fingertips, but I'm just so aware that a large percentage of our population lives in rural South Africa and not in the urban cities. But most of our resources seem to be allocated here in the cities, and it's understandable. It's where the power and the influence and so on is. But if we want to reach the millions of South Africans who are left behind, really, it's through the traditional leaders, definitely. So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it seems like there's a need for different kinds of structures or processes to help coordinate this work. Am I right? I don't know if anyone wants to speak to that. Any ideas around, because it seems like it's working here in Pretoria, but how do we now translate that to the provinces?
Yeah.
They need to go back to the drawing board. There has to be an aggressive turnaround strategy. You first identify your target group when you establish this sector, this department. Your vision, your mission, what do you want to achieve? How are you going to achieve it? Then you move from that pace. Then you are able to reach your target audience from there. As I'm saying that, as a department, first and foremost, you have to exist in South Africa under the legislation as per all other departments. Then establish yourself. How am I going to reach? So there has to be a drastic turnaround strategy so that we can all benefit from, we cannot benefit via other organizations, other departments. The department is supposed to have said that we must deal directly with this, this department. For instance, I was talking to a fellow colleague now that we need a turnaround strategy now to GBV. We need to introduce positive reinforcement so that we don't talk negative all the time. There has to be positive reinforcement now. How do you do that? We begin rewards. You know, this particular community has achieved so much through this boys' assembly, girls in EO, and whatnot. Then we do positive reinforcement. We work on that. This is the department that's supposed to be working with in putting those strategies down. What I'm saying is supposed to be somewhere in the National Strategic Plan of GBV. It has to be there. If it's not there, it has to be there. Because you put a plan in place, how are you going to achieve it? How are you going to make sure that, okay, you achieve, then how are you going to make sure it's sustainable? Introduce a positive reinforcement now so that it stays there as a key milestone. Thank you.
Lady D, do you have a last thing you'd like to say?
No, thank you so much. Quite valuable insights from our colleagues and our Queen. Just to add on to say, building onto the capacity of Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability. Remember, the children component went to social development. So now we are sitting with a department called Women, Youth, Persons with Disability. So there are different forums within, or fora within that department that I'm aware of. you have the youth component, youth forum. They meet on a quarterly basis. The invitation goes out to all stakeholders, including traditional leaders. I'll tell you why I'm saying that, and I'm not speaking on their behalf. It's just a matter of me just being opportuned with that thing, because our youth desk also has got some contribution towards the working machinery of the youth forum. They do have a gender mainstreaming forum. Now this forum is multiple departments, including COCTA. Now what we might want to understand further is what is the relationship of COCTA and the houses of traditional leaders. Because the understanding that I have from my previous life as a government official is that there should be gender focal persons within respective departments. I was a gender focal person before, and I did. Khoshidi Khale is there, he knows. There was nothing that I would not do without the Khoshi's involvement as the chairperson of the House of Traditional Leaders. But you see, the dynamic that we have here is also personality driven, right? If this person likes or is passionate about this job this way and fights for things to be done, it will be done, right? Now, if this person who is now an incumbent and now has total disregard of what is another challenge, frank one, is that we put people there in those positions who have got political clout and are not really technocrats into understanding these issues. And that's why we leave out important stakeholders like this in the whole working of, implementation. So once we get the right people in the right, I know the gender machinery also wanted to, were advocating for themselves to be recognized as professionals, so that there's a grading system, sort of like you would have with the social workers, because they are dealing with, and that was supposed to respond to what Queen is saying, that door at that level where somebody can knock and say, I need help on this, and this is what must happen. So the district-wide model as well was trying to address those issues. Unfortunately, with the devolvement of functions, as it were, within government, there are certain things that can be done at national level, at provincial level, at district level, and so on. So we just need that coordination that is being punted on. We just need to find the mechanics of how to do it. It's already there. The structures, Municipal Structures Act clearly defines on how things must be done, as well as the House of Traditional Leaders, procedures and processes. It's all there. We just need the right people to do the work. But also overhaul not only just the strategy, the communication strategy that will help everyone to understand where we are as a country and where we want to go. It starts with this deconstructing messages like asina valo. That means I don't have a conscience. So what is going to happen when I don't have a conscience? I'm going to kill. The worst thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to steal. I'm going to be corrupt. Because why? Andina valo mos. I don't have conscience. So the moment we bring the black consciousness back and we start dealing with how our cultural norms are spoken about and addressed and appreciated, we'll be able to realize the peace and security that we want to see in our country. Imagine a peaceful South Africa. Imagine a secured South Africa. This we can do all together.
Thank you, Lady D. I think there's a number of things you said there that are important. And I first of all want to say we are exactly on the same page around the coordination and the communication. I think that's really where it is in the mechanics. You say there are structures in place. They're just not operating in the way they need to. COGTA is such an important part in all of this, that the gender focal person at COGTA is perhaps something we need to be looking into. I thought it was just technically quite important that you mentioned that this is the Department of Women, Youth, and people with disabilities, and that children are now part of the Department of
Social Development.
Which is causes a bit of confusion again, because there's a lot of overlap, I think, between these departments and coordination. But Tivo, let me give you a chance to say your final words in response to all of this.
I think on my side is to appreciate, I think, the openness and also the honesty, in the assessment of how, the people on the ground are not feeling, us. I think, that's the way I can start, but also I will emphasize the whole issue that you have mentioned of coordination. So it's back to the drawing board for us to say, how best do we coordinate in order for us to ensure that the people that are working on the ground on the grassroots, are impacted by the kind of work that we do. Certainly we can do better in coordination. Certainly we can do better in ensuring that the key structures that could reach better the local communities are included in our work. I think that's the take home that I'm taking. For me, it's a very, very, very positive take home that I'm getting out of this conversation.
Thank you, Tivo. And we're also aware of the constraints on government, and I think the resource constraints. This is really the environment we were working in. But I think the key for me is to find willing actors in the different sectors, and to see how we can work together going forward. Because we all want to reach the goals of the NAP. We all want to reach the goals of the SDGs. This is our shared interest. It's a question of how to get there. Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time, so we need to wrap up here. But thank you very much to our panel. Let's give them a warm round of applause.